Well, good evening, everyone. On behalf of the NYU Meyers Alumni Association, I would like to welcome you to another Myers Marvels event. I am Fidel Lim. I'm a member of the NYU Meyers Alumni Association and a clinical associate professor here and program director of the nursing education program at Myers. And NYU Meyers College of Nursing is committed to producing lifelong learners who will excel in their nursing careers and be recognized as leaders who keep a patient-centered care and health of the society at the forefront of their values. And Myers graduates hold positions of leadership in the profession, practicing in diverse clinical, academic, and administrative settings. The Myers Marvels series shines a light on some of our most prominent alumni and faculty that have influenced the nursing profession. So tonight I am thrilled that we are going to hear from our Dean Angela Amar. And Dr. Amar is the Dean of the NYU Myers College of Nursing and Erling Perkins McGriff Professor of Nursing. Prior to her appointment as Dean of NYU Myers in August of 2023, Dr. Amar was a tenured faculty at Emory University and Boston College. Most recently, she was the Dean of School of Nursing at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. While at UNLV, Dr. Amar's innovative approach and focus on advancing strategic priorities have led to growth in student enrollment across academic programs
Muted.
and improvement of quality and
It's your name that
diverse faculty and staff, and enhance financial stability through revenue generating activities and increased ranking and stature of the school, faculty, and students. As a leading scholar in gender-based violence, Dr. Amar's research has influenced the direction of campus policy nationally. Dr. Amar is also a leader in nursing education regarding violence and forensic nursing. And Dr. Amar is recognized for her efforts to advance diversity in nursing leadership across organizations and institutions, and she is a highly sought after speaker and media guest. This event this evening is moderated by Dr. Alexis Don Amor. Dr. Don Amor is a clinical associate professor at NYU Myers College of Nursing. She is an accomplished nurse and a midwife, and she serves as the vice president of the American College of Nurse Midwives. And now I will turn the program to Dr. Amor. Dr. Amor?
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction, Fidel. I'm so honored to be here today to facilitate this conversation with someone whom I admire both personally and professionally. So Dean Amar, who I will refer to from henceforth as Angela, because I know you prefer that. I really look forward to this conversation. So how are you this afternoon?
Good on this rainy day, and I'm dry, so that's the most important part.
Okay. Well, where I am is a little bit not so wet, so I don't envy you at all. And so we have a couple of questions, but I know you and I talk quite a bit, and so we can just be kind of casual with this. And for everyone that's in attendance, if you have questions, just feel free to put them in the chat if things come up as we have this dialogue. And in about maybe 20 or 30 minutes or so, we'll kind of field some of those questions, and then we can just all have a very robust conversation. So my first question for you, Angela, is could you take us back to a time, take us back in time. I don't know how far back in time you want to go, but tell us how you started your career in nursing.
That's a great question to think about. I always tell people that I liked science and I liked people. And so nursing was a great blend for me. I wasn't the Band-Aids on my teddy bear kind of kid. I was more trying to do science experiments and prove stuff. My father also was very ill when I was in high school, and he died actually my freshman year in college. And so we spent a lot of time in hospitals, and so really got to see the difference that nurses could make. or not make, because in various ways. But it really did start me to thinking about this career within nursing where you could combine science and people and make a go of it. So I
That's
started, yeah.
Yeah. How old were you at that time? Were you really young or just curious?
He was sick throughout my high school years, and then, as I said, died when I was a freshman in college. So he was young. Me
Yeah.
too.
Well, I'm sorry about that. That's hard. And, I know that, getting through adversity and I know we can talk a little bit about that later and how that forms your leadership style, but I'm grateful that that had such a profound impact on you and kind of led you into the field, so to speak. So that started your career, but then kind of so you became a nurse. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about, your first clinical practice and kind of how your career has changed, but how did your career kind of go from the clinical piece into the leadership, and then kind of what are some of the changes that you've seen across your career?
Right. I think one thing I always find fascinating is that in nursing school, I think every professor that I had, every clinical instructor told me to go back to graduate school, but every single one of them said, work first, you got to work in med surg. And I knew I liked psych. I mean, I liked everything when I was in it. But the thing I liked most was the people part. So I like psych. And I often think if somebody had just said, go back to school sooner, what difference that might have made, who knows? So I went into med surg. I was on a surgical step down floor. Things were very different because PPE wasn't the same. Needles were all over the place, all kind of stuff that isn't the same now. And I think I lasted like about 6, 7 months because I was just kind of like, why am I doing this? I want to do psych. Why am I in this thing that people are telling me I have to do? I think we have a lot of sacred cow kind of stuff that people just say. And, for the rest of my career, I've been in psych. I'm a master's in psych, liked teaching, thought teaching was wonderful. Did that at the master's in psych, but then also did a little education component and really thought I'd teach later. And then the place where I got my master's offered me a job teaching with my master's. And I thought, well, this could be good. In the middle of all of that, but the pay was awful then. But had young child, was married, in the middle of that got divorced. And so just thought, well, this teaching thing kind of is working because I can spend a lot of time with my kid, do good stuff. But we also started thinking there's got to be more to this. And I need more education. So kind of decided that when my kids started school, I would start back at school. And initially was just thinking, well, I'll stay put, I'll do whatever. And one of my mentors, Brenda Owens, actually, I was talking to her and saying, I wish I could go to a really good school. And she said, you can. And I think just the idea that somebody believed in me and thought I could do something really good was enough for me to say, maybe I can. And I ended up at Penn, and I think that was one of the best decisions. I kept saying I wanted to learn more than the classroom, but I wanted to learn from the richness of the environment. And Penn gave that to me because there was all this stuff going on in the school and the university. There were all these phenomenal names. Jackie Fawcett was one, but I think I started the year after you left. So the class with Carol was very unbalanced because it was just Carol and not your perspective. But it was this school full of all these new names you knew and these people, and just a phenomenal education. And I always think it's ironic that I went back. I wanted to go back to school because I like teaching so much and I've taught so much less, but I've enjoyed every part of my career and every piece. I was probably resistant to the administrator kind of part, was always a leader and always led from wherever I was. And when I did the Robert Wood Johnson Nurse Faculty Scholars, all of the people on the National Advisory Board would always talk to me. Nancy Woods and Kathy Dracup, Angela McBride, Beverly Malone, Jackie Campbell, all these people. And they'd always say to me, well, when you're a dean, blah, blah, blah. When I interviewed at Emory, Linda McCauley's like, I know I'm going to help you become a dean. And I remember thinking, I don't know that I want to be a dean. I kind of thought deans were kind of crazy at times. So I'm like, I don't think I want to do that. And, but everybody said it all the time. When you're a dean, well, when you're a dean, you'll do. And so a job opened at Emory. It was an assistant dean job. And the person who had stepped down came in my office and said, I just stepped down from this job and you're the only one in this school who should do this. And I happened to be reading Lean In at the time. And I thought, maybe I should lean in. Oh my God, am I going to do this? So I submitted the letter and got the job. And I think the first 6 months you feel crazy because you don't know anything. You're learning all this stuff. But I remember thinking, I don't know that I'll ever have a job that dean isn't in the title because I do like this. So whatever it is, these people all thought they saw was something real. I still don't know what it was, but was very applicable. And I've enjoyed the whole thing of being thinking about it. You think about it like in your clinical practice, you can affect change for people one patient at a time or one community, whatever. When you start doing the research, you can really affect a lot of people because your work can have such wide standing. And I always thought, I think I was a pretty good teacher. And as a teacher in the classroom, I could change the lives of the people in the room. I feel like as an administrator, I have the ability to change the lives for a lot of people in the school because you can affect change for everybody. So long answer, sorry.
No, that was a good answer. I mean, if I have a lot of follow-up questions, I think I'm curious to know. So in that kind of trajectory, you subsequently had all of this leadership experience. And so how do you think that feeds into your approach here at Meyers, right? So you kind of shifted into admin and more into leadership. So how does that influence how you look at Meyers, how you want to lead the school?
Oh, so much. I think that's the mentor piece too, because I've had a lot of strong mentors. Any one of those big names I just named still mentors. I saw Beverly Malone just this weekend at the conference, and we had our little check-in kind of chat. She's always very helpful. Carolyn Mosley was another one that believed in me from forever and was sponsor for me for both the Academy and then the NLN Academy of Education. So I think all these lessons have been helpful. So all these pieces of information, like the listen, like you need to go in as a new dean, you're hired because of all you've done. But if you come in trying to do, you'll lose people. So you come into something and you listen and you appreciate the wisdom of everyone there. You learn a lot about the organization. You get a feel for the culture. You hear how people do things. And then before you make any change. And so I think that's been a strong, good lesson. Another thing Angela McBride always talks about, I remember talking to her like kind of short into Emory and saying, oh my God, this is just too much stuff. How can I get this done? Blah, blah, blah. And her response was, they hired you to lead, not to do. And there is a difference. And I think sometimes people miss the skill of leading because to really be able to help move people and to help motivate people and inspire people and to craft a vision that everyone can see and really get people going is work. I always say I want to be involved. I want to make sure we're clear on vision and where we're going. I'm not so much into the tactics that people use because I feel people work better on their own projects than my stuff or doing what I tell them. But I think there's work in being able to lead and not have to be involved in everything or not have to micromanage everything. I think that so all of these are kind of the lessons. Being able to do this appraisal and think about as systems. I've always been, I think, from a psych background, a systems thinker. And I think that we can think about things on an individual level. An individual level doesn't always provide change that's needed across a system. So being able to appraise a system and think about all of the pieces and all of the parts and how do they interact and how do they come together and how can you mobilize those parts to move towards an agenda has been helpful. So it's the leaders, Robert Wood Johnson was full of all this leadership training, all these pieces, did the Wharton program that's for deans. It was phenomenal, but it's the application of this knowledge. I read a lot. I read all those books about Blink and Change and Daniel Pink and all the, but it's being able to apply all of those things and all of those lessons in the moment when needed is what's important.
Yes. You said quite a few things that I want to dig into just a little bit more.
Okay.
So two things. The first thing I want to ask, so you said you do this reading and kind of all this kind of knowledge and like scholarship that you do to kind of pour into yourself to make sure you're ready for this position as dean. Can you talk a little bit more about that process and or about your actual research and scholarship? Like, how are you able to maintain that as a nursing leader? I know your research has been focused like on sexual assault, but if you can kind of talk with us a little bit about your research and scholarship and a little bit more about the ways that you continue to advance that. And then the second follow-up after that will be about mentorship, but I'll ask that question next.
But the first part you said about the leadership, I should have been writing down, because you said that about the reading. So I believe in a learning organization. I believe in learning. I believe if I was to like pick a superpower, it would be to learn everything. So that's obviously a fatal flaw in my wish, because impossible, right? But I do believe that like you stop learning, you stop living. And life is about learning, and you're always exploring, and you're always in the world and learning about the world and learning about new people, new stuff. And so to me, then in the role, how do you keep that going? So I do look at things like the Harvard Business Review, the articles they post. They're usually these short kind of things. One of my favorites was one that talked about managing our energy rather than our time. And we talk time all the time. And yes, time's a finite resource, 24 hours, right? We all get. But if you don't know when your energy's on and when you're best, you could give away time on things like email that are time sucks. So not like, Emory was horrible with the email. And so I would respond to emails at night. I would sit at home while I'm watching TV, responding to emails. I didn't need as much brain power to do that. Anything that I need to do that's important is in the daytime, because in the morning, because I'm going to function best. And so I think the creating a learning environment makes sense. I've always done the retreats for my team. We do the inventory. So we learn about ourselves, we learn about others, how to interact with others. I believe in, we probably have sent a couple articles out since I've been here. I believe in sending articles out to faculty. I believe that learning is growing and living and developing. And so that's core for me. And I believe that an organization should be a learning organization where we're constantly developing, we're moving through new things, we're learning about things. And not that I'm saying change on a dime, like the tennis match. All I'm saying is that we're constantly evolving and constantly growing. My research on sexual assault just came from psych, because in psych, you realize that so many people have experienced violence and it's pretty ubiquitous. And so started out thinking about doing domestic violence, ended up doing dating violence work. And at the time when I started doing the dating violence work, a lot of the literature was focused on perpetration in young people. And it was like, everybody hitting. And my research actually looked at victimization and said, what are the consequences? What happens to school? What happens to work? What happens to social activities? What are the mental health consequences? How injured are people? And so we looked at victimization, we looked at perpetration as well. And people who also hit back tended to have more injury and greater mental health symptoms. So it showed that an issue. What was striking for me early on was how many people hadn't told anybody, hadn't said a thing, and there was no disclosure. And there were people who said they said it first in the research. And so the work that I've done has really been looking at then, how do we identify people? They talk about things like a thick chart syndrome, where you find all the somatic complaints of all kind of backache pains, all kind of stuff. And it's really that there was a sexual assault or physical assault at some point. I've had people tell me, with like listening to you, I think I was raped in college, because people don't identify it. And so the work with the bystander intervention for how do you help bystanders to respond has come from that. The work with college campus policy. I was chair of the sexual assault hearing board at Emory. I was on the campus conduct board at Boston College, done the climate surveys at the university. But it's clear that if we're really going to make this happen, it's not just about focusing on the young women that it's happening to, it's focusing on the community in which they're involved, and how does that community support or help make things better or worse. And so the campus policies, as they relate, all stem from this thing of how do we get people seen, recognized, so that they can get help. I still work with a colleague at UVA. We publish together. We both have had a lull. Mine has been from the dean, but also from a personal life trauma thing. And we just were talking about how we're kicking back up with some of the stuff that we have and some of the data that's sitting there that we've been sluggish on. I think it's important to still at least be seen as a scholar and contribute to the scholarly literature. And so most of the work that you see from me comes from either the violence lens, but also on diversity. And I think diversity is something that early on I knew that if I didn't take the time to think about things that affect people who look like me, then who would? And so I got very involved in a lot of diversity initiatives on campus. At this point in time, I feel like I use my voice in a different way because I sit at different tables. So on the board of the academy, I'm able to use my voice to talk about diversity issues. When I sit in senior leadership team meetings, I'm able to use my voice. Government Affairs Committee that I chaired for AECN, it's all about policy and campus. So I feel like I'm not as busy on the committee kind of work, but I'm sitting in higher circles and bigger circles, and I'm able to use my voice to speak out for things.
Yes, and that's really important. I think that's what something that stands out about you. I think in schools of nursing, we've had more of a traditional kind of idea of what dissemination of knowledge is and what impact is and what scholarship is. But when you think about it from that lens, it shows us that you can have impact and scholarship in different ways. And I think you've always been someone who's thought outside of the box. Even when you describe your research with sexual assault, you talk a lot about the community and the importance of that and the impact. And I think that that comes through in your leadership style and how you talk to faculty, how you're trying to design a culture here at Meyers that is inclusive, that takes down the silos and really tries to foster, collaborative thought and, how we move forward with a collaborative vision. So I can see in how you're describing your career, how that also has translated into your leadership style. I want
One
to,
trick pony, huh?
huh?
I'm teasing. I said I'm a one trick pony, like do it all the same way. No, but that's fine. That's a fine one because I think that's very true. I think I'm very intentional about a lot of stuff, but I think that there's a consistent theme across a lot of stuff.
Right,
Very
but
true.
it's nice because you have a lot of different pockets of things you're interested in, but you can see the common thread, right? Whereas sometimes people want you to be in a certain box and stick to one certain thing. You've managed to take your career and float it around many different areas, but you see that common theme linked throughout. And I think that's what makes you very unique and special as a leader. I do want to talk a little bit about mentorship. And as many of you may or may not know, Dean Amar is a mentor of mine and has been very influential in my career and has provided some wonderful advice. I remember one time I was having imposter syndrome and I called her and I said, I can't do this. I don't think I'm cut to be a scholar. I know I'm smart, but maybe I should just, catching babies is easy. They do their little turns and then they fly out, and you catch them, right? And she said to me, you're a star. You need to always remember that. Don't ever dim your own light. Try really hard not to do that. I remember those words verbatim. And so I say all that to say, I know you're a really big advocate for mentorship. Could you tell us about some of your mentors or mentees? You've talked about it a little bit, but how they've influenced you and what is the best advice you've ever received?
Yeah, and I think I talked a lot about the mentors, but I'll talk about mentees too, because I feel like the mentees, it's a reciprocal relationship, and I learn a lot from my mentees. I remember before even looking into this job, I got nominated. People kept saying stuff to me like, "What are you doing? Where are you going?" or whatever. And I said to one of my mentees, who's a young woman, she started DNPs of Color, and she said, how the universe is talking to you. The universe is sending you all these signs. You have to clue in. And it wasn't something that I don't think anybody, the mentors who were above me, would have said, but I think it's reciprocal. And so I feel like I talk to you, Lexi, and you talk about things through a different lens, a different generation. It helps me think about things differently because your generation sees things differently. I feel like they have a lot of mentees across all over the place that I think my admin is like, stop telling people to reach out to you because there's too many people. But there's always something you learn from other people too. And I think that's the beauty. And then I have a lot of mentors, as I said earlier, that I've been with for forever and just keep adding new mentors along that help.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I think that's the beauty of mentorship, that you see it as a kind of a reciprocal process. And I know that's a very wonderful style. I think it's good for faculty development. And I think I've already started to see how that's also infiltrating into Meyers and kind of how we are trying to support one another on different levels. So, thank you for that. And thank you for always being such a wonderful mentor to me. Another question I wanted to ask, and we have a few questions in the chat I'm going to get to, but I have just a few more questions. When you think about your career, what are you most proud of?
The people. I feel like there's been such, I keep in touch with my students from Georgetown. I was their class advisor of that last class that graduated before I left. And I think I know all of them, and many of them have gone back to school. The students from Boston College, the students from Emory, and the doctoral program and the honors program where I taught. The mentees and what people are accomplishing and what people are doing is the thing I'm most proud of.
That's great. That's great. That's sweet. All right. What about, so you're this nursing leader, you're in these national organizations, you're dean of Roy Meyers. When you think about the future of nursing, I know we had that big future of nursing report. There's a lot of talk about our role as nurses. What changes do you see in the future, and how do you see yourself as a part of that vision?
I think that's a complicated question. I think higher ed is kind of under attack right now, and that higher ed as a whole, and nursing obviously sits in higher ed. And so how do we respond to those challenges, threats? And we're in a polarized country where and part of that polarization plays out in the legislation that we're seeing regarding higher ed and the attitudes of people feeling like higher ed doesn't have the value or the worth. And so I think that's something we've had to consider, since nursing has continued with all these multiple levels. We've got legislation that looks at giving money to associate degree programs, not BSN programs. And so I think the higher ed issues are things that we really have to think about. I think the spiraling cost of healthcare and the changing landscape of where people will receive care. With technology, we're so much further ahead. We've got so much more done. We're still preparing students in this acute care model for a world that probably isn't going to be as acute care focused. We don't all are, and we've had a mismatch or misalignment sort of between what the profession and the hospital and the employers want and what we provide. And so how we align that is going to be an important thing for the future. I think when I think about nursing, one of the things that I would love to see is just the recognition for all of the brilliance and smartness that we bring. I think that, sometimes we're content to be kind of fly on the wall. And I don't know that everybody gets that how smart you have to be a nurse, how much information you have to absorb, how you have to think critically and pull all of this information from multiple sources to do things. I look at engineering, where engineering is, bills themselves as engineers help people solve problems. And I think, well, that could apply to nursing too. And engineers are all over the place doing all kind of stuff. This isn't like they're in logistics, they're in real estate, and they're all kind of things. And I think, well, nursing could be that way too, because we help people solve problems, and we're able to think, be innovative. We're able to solve things with minimal resources, with less. So, I mean, I look for a future where we really are seen, we're trusted, where we're really seen for all the strength that we have to, and all the value.
That's really novel. I think that's thinking outside the box and more, like you said, an integrative model of nursing. I know you and I have talked a little bit about the community piece and integrating us more into that community space. And I think that's a great idea and a way to keep nursing cutting edge and kind of out front as we need to be. All right, we're almost done. 2 more minutes and I'm going to get to the questions in the chat. Tell us something fun, a fun fact about yourself.
Oh God, I thought about this before we started. So I'm originally from the South. I'm from New Orleans. And so I am superstitious about a whole lot of stuff. If I spill salt, I'm going to throw it over my shoulder, because that's what you do when you spill salt, because it's bad luck. I don't want to split the pole when you're walking with somebody, because that's bad luck. I don't always look at the cracks. I should probably. I might have been jinxing myself with bad luck for not looking at cracks, but I am very super. And you don't talk about stuff before it happens because you don't need to jinx yourself. And so, yeah, I have a lot. I could probably keep going on and on. I have a lot of Southern superstition based on family, grandparents, all this other.
Right, that's interesting. Okay, so we'll check your office out to see what you might have in there to.
I know, and even though logically I know it makes no sense and it's like magical thinking, but why take any chances?
Right, why take unnecessary chances? I agree 100%. All right, before I ask questions from the chat, do you have any final pearls of wisdom for maybe our alumni and students who might be listening in?
You know, whenever people ask me this question, I think I surprise people with my answer because if to me, if you're not sure what to do or you're in situations that you're uncertain, the best advice I think I give is just to be kind. I think we have no idea what people are going through in their lives and in their days. And most of people's behavior is about them, not us, even though we own it, take it. And especially as a leader, I think that people, you already have some power. You already are in the seat of authority. Like you don't have to lord it over people and you don't have to make people feel bad and you don't have to, you know, any kind of bully or essence. So to me, if you're stuck on kind of not sure what to do, taking a deep breath and being kind when we're ready to tell somebody all that they did wrong, taking a deep breath and stop and telling them something good about them first, or good about them. And really being mindful of that. Sometimes things can be, I think constructive feedback is good and everybody wants to grow and learn. But I don't know that we're always think about the kindness factor as much. And you don't know what people are living through. We don't know what people are going through. So be kind.
That is a wonderful response. I would not have expected that you say that, but that is so wonderful, and it really sets the tone of again your leadership style, and it's a lot easier to move a group forward towards a vision when you feel that people care, their leader cares about them and cares how they feel and cares about what they bring to the table. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I have a few questions that have come in into the chat. The first one is from Sharon, and her question was about how you mentioned how you preserve your energy, right? So she said you talked about reading emails at nights, and her question is, how do you maintain work-life balance and complete all of your scholarly work?
Oh God, leaving Emory helped because that sounds awful, but Emory was a whole lot of energy storm. I mean, I think it's really important. I feel like I do try to come to work and go home and play and within reason, not mix. I mean, there are times, but I think that there's got to be some space for the guilty pleasure, for the wine. I just saw someone drinking, maybe because the glass looked like a wine glass. I think there's time for all that stuff. And I think that, so for me, it is about thinking about more work-life integration. So whenever like traveling for work, I'm always going to do something fun wherever I am. Although at DC, I feel like I've run out of, but I'll wander the mall. I'll go in one thing, good thing it's free, right? Because I'm there and I can do it. And I think it's real important to think about the things you love, the things that that help replenish your soul, and you do. I read a lot of fiction books because I like that. There's TV shows that I like to watch, the crime shows I love, those 2020s and all that other. So I watch those shows because I love them. I get People magazine delivered weekly onto my iPad, and I read I love keeping up with celebrity gossip. But I think it's important that we figure out the things that feed our soul, and that it doesn't have to be things that take lots and lots of time, that you build those things in.
Absolutely. I'm still trying to learn that lesson. So we might have
But
to
you have
talk.
young kids.
Well, so are they my work-life balance? I mean, can I call them?
Yeah, but you need time sitting on the floor playing and doing that stuff with your kids, and you need time to do your work. But that is the balance, right? And that's the integration. And so even if you're sitting on the floor with your kids and some movie they're watching is on and you're reading something for work, you're with them. And I think it's the integration of things more than the balance. It's how do you make room for everything within that space,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, me and Noah, my son's name is Noah. We were watching Super Mario Brothers, and Bowser. I don't know if y'all have watched the movie, but he's in love with the princess, and it's this scene where he's like, "Peaches, peaches, 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 peaches." So I was trying to like work on something, and then I just had to stop and just sing the Peaches song, right? But I was like, I'm balanced. Like I can work and I can sing the Peaches song, so I'll count them as
Exactly. That's a win.
that's a win. Okay, Dr. Fawcett has a question. She says, Angela, to what extent is the legacy of Martha Rogers and the science of unitary human beings at Meyers now?
Oh, I think the legacy of all of the greatness that is this alumni is so strong. I'm in awe all the time of the idea that this was a division in a school of education. And yet I never knew that. I mean, I always thought this was a school. I remember meeting someone who came to Boston College from here and said it's in a dental school. And I'm like, a dental school? Like, what's like, so I mean, I think the legacy of all the signatures of all the people who've gotten their doctorates. I mean, just all the impressive names that have been through this place resonates through this entire place. I think the progressiveness of this school, I love that NYU as a university even is more forward thinking than more looking backwards at history. But I think that the spirit of all of the innovation, all of the forward progressive, you know, is there. And in these determined leaders who were, like I said, in the school of education, while everybody's thinking it's a college already. So I'm not going to tell you that I know a lot about what goes on in the curriculum and what people are teaching, but I will tell you that the spirit of greatness is really strong in this school, and you feel it in this college, in this building. You feel the spirit of greatness, and you know that you're standing on the shoulders of giants, and you know that you've got this legacy that you've got to continue to excel and continue to be progressive and push forward, because you owe it to all of these people who've done so many incredible things for nursing. Not a full answer, but a sort of answer.
Yeah, that's good. Sorry, I'm in an office building where they are making noise right outside of my door, so I apologize for that. Last question before we kind of, wrap this up. This has been a very great conversation. Sharon had one more follow-up question. She wanted to know, you talked a little bit about how you send articles to faculty, and the question is, how do you follow up to ensure that they are engaged in your vision and having the same mental model?
Oh, I think that's a constant process. And so I think the talking with faculty to gathering data. I met with every faculty and staff person when I started here, just to learn people's perceptions about the institution. Great crash course, because everybody tells you different things from different lenses, different perspectives. Once we had finished with all that data gathering and listening, we did a retreat in early January where we really talked about new strategic priorities. Our current strategic plan goes into 25, so we're not in a rush to do that. But we have the new president of the university starting, and she's got her strategic pathways and enabling pathways, and we've identified things within the school. So the retreat in January was really about getting the conversation, the buy-in, the discussion, so that everyone sort of could be on the same page, but everyone could give ideas. And we're about to start another process where we're going to ask for volunteers to work in specific areas to really think about what should the parts of the strategic plan look like, the actual implementation parts. And then the next other thing that I'm doing is working with UDAR to really think about philanthropic priorities and how do they align with the strategic plan, and how are they things that really are forward thinking and push out the school. So in multiple levels, and I think the check-ins, I know at the next faculty council, my kind of report is talking about some of the bigger picture things, but also helping to keep people connected.
That's good. I think on the, Sharon put a few more questions about, when you're working with this leadership team or just working with faculty, and let's say that you talked a lot about kindness. Do you have any advice of how to kind of use that same framework of kindness in the face of, let's say there is instability or there's like conflict within a team? how do you kind of address that with that spirit of kindness, even in those kind of situations?
I mean, I think there's some things that are kind of, for me, I feel like I feel like I have the ability to come in and create environments where people feel valued, respected, heard, and it's very important to me. And I feel like bullying behavior, mean behavior is deal breaker like for me, and that behavior needs to be confronted and that behavior needs to be dealt with. And in my past in leadership positions, I've reached out to people to say, these are reports I've gotten, people have, come forward, or this is the behavior I observed. I think telling someone that your this behavior is bullying, this is different conversation than you are a bully and the accusatory. But I think that some behaviors have to be called out. And I don't the rudeness, the dismissive behavior, sometimes we see it with, faculty, with staff, that can't exist. I mean, I feel like as a leader, you have a responsibility to people. I see it more as responsibility than power. And people have entrusted you with their professional lives, and you have a responsibility to make sure that their professional lives work. And part of that is confronting bad behavior when you see it and addressing the bad behavior. And not in a way that says, you horrible piece of, but in a way that says this behavior is counterintuitive to what we're trying to create here. This behavior isn't helpful to you or others. I've talked with people about, what are they trying to accomplish and what are the goals that you're trying to work through. Well, how is this behavior supporting or helping that? How could we have done that differently? But I think that behavior has to be confronted.
Yeah, and that's important to hear from you as the leader of the school, because I think that some of those things have been normalized into nursing, kind of some of the hidden tolls of ascending the ranks, or working in an academic space, that some of those behaviors have been allowed in the space. So I think thank you for sharing that perspective about how do you call things out with a spirit of respect and still maintaining professionalism. So our last question comes from Dr. Lim, and he asked if you could share some advice on what you would share with students who maybe want to pursue a faculty role or come into academia. What would you tell them?
Oh God, I'd tell them it's the greatest career. I loved being a faculty person. I loved being a faculty, have a lot of respect, and try to, as a leader, be real clear about what's faculties and what's administration, because I respect that. I think as a faculty person, being exposed, if you want the faculty career, being exposed to as much as possible, thinking about the experiences that you're having, that students are having now, the teachers they love, the teachers that they not so much. What is it about them? Reading a lot, learning a lot, being open to feedback, and I'm not going to say criticism, but open to feedback. I mean, that's how you grow. To me, failure is just another way to not do something. And so, but we learn from that and grow. But I think anybody who wants to be a faculty person, I would say it's a very rewarding job. And I think it's a good, it's one of the academia pays off in the long run, because you do get the time to spend doing you're not committed in the same way that you are in service. And yeah, I would say go for it.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. I'm grateful to have been able to help facilitate that. Thank you to everyone. I'm going to pass this now back to Fidel, and he will give us our closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Dean Amar and Dr. Don Amor. And I was writing down notes, as I listened to both of you, and I must say, if I wasn't a faculty yet, I think tonight I will decide to become one after what I've heard from you. And I see that from what I hear, you are very committed to the relational aspect of our lives here at Meyers, as opposed to the transactional. So, and I love that. And the other thing that I really love, when you said, if you stop learning, you stop living. So learning sustains us all, and you're bringing us into that perspective that we are a learning environment, a learning organization. So I thank you for your wisdom, your insights, inspiration for what you do for the university in your career. So thank you to our guests who attended tonight. You will be receiving a survey later this evening. And we encourage you to share your feedback about the program. And please join us for the next Meyers event featuring Ann Burgess. I think you might have received the email on that one. And this is going to be on April 11th at 5:30 in the afternoon. And the registration link is in the chat. We hope to see you all there and have a lovely evening. Keep up the good work and stay in touch.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.